Tax code system that we have right now. What happened on tax day? 47% of wage-earning American households did not pay federal income tax. That's a very dangerous number as we go forward in this country. I think that if we go across the board, 15 to 17, GE paid no taxes. That's corporate business. But if we go 15 to 17% across the board as far as personal income tax rate, probably the only real deduction we need is for children. I think that's how we help infuse money back into the pockets of the American people and get rid of this onerous tax system that we have, where we have countless amount of loopholes. And then the other thing is, I'll talk about it a little later, corporate business tax rate, 35%, second highest in the world. Japan right now is #1. Japan is already talking about lowering theirs. We will be #1. When you take that 35%, you add on the average of 4 to 6% for states with their corporate income tax rate. Now we're talking about 39
tax
to 41%.
loopholes for corporations, they pay nothing. How could you stand there and say that? Come on,
I'm not afraid of GE. The most important thing you have to understand, if you flash it down, you get rid of all the loopholes, then you don't have the corporations that are trying to do what you see happening right now. So that's what we want to try to do. Next slide. Okay, I was asked a question about taking care of jobs. We came up with this bill here called Small Business Encouragement Act.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone.
On Friday, before we went on to the Easter break, is what we call the Small Business Encouragement Act. What we did was we went over to the National Federation of Independent Businessmen, who is kind of the advocacy group for small businesses, and we asked them what did they think we could do to try to incentivize and get an opportunity for small businesses to grow. So what we came up with, if you are in the previous annual economic year, fiscal year, at $20 million revenue or less, 100 employees or less, we're talking about a $6,000 tax credit for you to get out there and hire an American that's been on the unemployment roll. If you're in some of these counties that have been severely affected, we're also trying to bump up that tax rate as well, because as you know, the state of Florida has been hovering between 11 to 12% unemployment. And down here in South Florida, it's absolutely incredible. Anywhere from down in Miami-Dade, close to 14% sometimes, in Broward, 10.9 to 11%, and then up here in Palm Beach, I think between 11.5 to 12%. So you see we have 3 co-sponsors already. It is bipartisan, and we hopefully, when we get back up, we can get this pushed through Small Business Committee and get it to the House. Next slide. So this is a picture of what's going on up there in Washington, D.C. It is truly a divided government between the House of Representatives, between the Senate, and of course the White House. But that's okay. We will continue to work through that, standing on principle. Next slide. Unemployment. This is what the graph of unemployment has looked like in the United States of America over the past 10 years. And you can see the blue line total employment, and then the unemployment rate. And this is where we are right now. This is the delta. And we've got to close that gap. The key to rectifying the economic situation in the United States of America is set the conditions so that Americans can get back to work. Getting in our small businesses, getting more corporations and businesses to move down here. I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with a company called BRS Aerospace, who made the decision to move one of their facilities from Minneapolis, Minnesota down here. And the facility that they have designs, develops, and produces all the cargo parachutes for the United States military, right down in Pompano Beach. They came in, they hired local talent. What's even better, they have been partnering with a new veterans jobs program, and they're getting some of these homeless and jobless veterans, they're getting them back to work because they come from As you can see, that's where we started to have that decline coming after that September 08 financial crisis. We've got to close this gap, ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to continue going forward. And that affects a lot of things. When you talk about Social Security, back in 1950, there were 16.5 people working for every one beneficiary of Social Security. Now we're down to 3 people working for every beneficiary of Social Security. And in about 5 years, we're talking about going down to 2. So we've got to get Americans back to work. Next slide. Well, it's just facts, man. Just the facts. Okay, now we'll talk about government spending. Government spending is getting out of control. Historically, government spending has been right at about the 20% mark. But where you see government spending right now, as per our GDP, is about the 25% mark. And as you can see, if we continue on this path, government spending is just going to get higher and higher. 3.6 trillion, 3.7, 3.8 trillion. The history of revenues in the United States of America right now average 2.2 to 2.3 trillion. It's not a revenue problem that comes into Washington, D.C. It's a spending problem. It's the outlays that go out. And if we're going to make an effective change, it is about reducing the size and the scope of the federal government if you're going to have long-term sustainable economic growth and job growth. That's just the bottom line. So that's what that.
Job growth is from demand. You need to increase demand.
Just shut up and listen. You might learn
You have to
something.
increase demand.
Thank you, sir. But this is where we're heading to. This is what we're trying to create. We're trying to bend down the curve of government spending to get it back into manageable levels.
How do you increase demand?
We'll get there. All right. Next slide. All right. Remember I talked about the federal deficit. Remember I talked about the federal deficit. When you are continuing to spend more than you're bringing in, there's the result of what is going to happen. And we've got to turn that around. Because if we don't turn that around, if we continue to have deficit spending in Washington, D.C., that means we're going to continue to borrow money in Washington, D.C., which means we're going to continue to be owned by other countries. And that's the problem as we go forward. That's a national security issue. It's a foreign policy issue. And the number one thing we have to do is bring that back into balance. Next slide. And so here, this is what it looks like as far as the debt if we don't make a difference in the budget resolutions that are out there. That's where it goes from this point on. Hopefully, we can bend it down. And that's the basis, one of the basis of that fiscal year 2012 budget resolution that I voted to approve. Now, it has to go to the Senate to see if it will be approved at the Senate level. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the critical point. We got a debt ceiling vote that is coming up. And if we continue to, for the 73rd or 74th time, say we're going to just raise the debt ceiling, raise the debt ceiling, raise the debt ceiling, and we don't make ourselves fiscally responsible in Washington, D.C., as the CBO said, by the year 2035, 2036, for that young man that's sitting back there kind of smiling, there will not be a United States of America. That's the danger of where we are. Next slide. Now, this is who is owning our debt. From 1970, currently where we are. 5%, and now it's up to 47% of foreign nations owning our debt. Next slide. And here you see the breakdown. 29.2% is China, then Japan. And you can see even Brazil has a piece of our debt. What is really concerning is the oil exporting nations. If we don't understand that energy independence means the development of our full spectrum of resources, the oil, the natural gas, the coal, the nuclear, the hydrogen, the Gulf Stream, the biofuels, the renewables, if we don't understand that's the means by which we can expand our economy, getting Americans back to work, developing new technologies, just the same as cyclone technologies down in Broward County, developing the next generation of steam engine technology. We're going to be owned by other countries that are nothing but despots, dictators, autocrats, and theocrats. That's what OPEC is. This is dangerous. China controls the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is going to expand in the year 2014. Larger cargo ships are going to be coming through the Panama Canal, which affects exactly what's happening in our economy down here in South Florida. $98 billion of revenue last year came in through Port Everglades. Think what happens if somehow that economic choke point is cut off to the United States of America. Think what happens if we don't get these free trade agreements with Panama and also Colombia pushed through, and how that affects the job situation up here in the United States of America. We are in an economic race with China because the one thing that they recognize, the one thing that they learned with the collapse of the Soviet Union, we did not defeat the Soviet Union militarily. We defeated the Soviet Union economically. And now we have a communist country that is learning you can take capitalism and you can turn it on the United States of America, Western civilization. And the other thing that's so important, energy resources. You look all over the globe, you will find the Chinese flag digging up energy resources and raw materials. As a matter of fact, today, Prime Minister of Pakistan called over to President Hamid Karzai of Afghanistan and asked him if he should not go into a long-term security arrangement with the United States of America, that he should join Pakistan and China.
Please be quiet.
That's where we stand. Next slide. And this is what China can do. This is why it affects our national security. This is why if we don't turn things around in our country economically, with the trade surplus that China is building, the world's largest blue water navy will fly under a Chinese flag within the next 8 to 10 years. Now, maybe that's not important to you people sitting out here, but let me tell you the importance of that. We're talking about the sea lanes of commerce. Every great civilization, dating all the way back to the Phoenicians, understood the importance of the sea lanes of commerce. In 1990, the United States of America had 546 naval war vessels. Today, the United States of America has 283. Next slide. And this is what we're talking about. The spending as opposed to the tax revenue. We have got to look at the means by which, yes, we can close loopholes, but we can incentivize people to create jobs here in the United States of America, in our small businesses and our corporations and businesses. I don't want to drive them away. I want them to come back here and I want them to reinvest. I want to bring their capital back here. I want them to come down to South Florida, which has the best venue, hard-working people, so that we can have more corporations, businesses, headquarters, manufacturing, production facilities down here in South Florida. That's how we turn it around. The thing the government must do is understand that they set the conditions for that growth. Now, I heard someone yell out there that we should tax the rich. Let me give you an interesting story. Let me give you a historical lesson. The historical lesson, if you go back and you look at what happened with Presidents Coolidge and President Harding, who took the marginal income tax rate for those upper top tax brackets and brought it down to 24%. And when they did that, the percentage revenues for the GDP